Hey, what's up, y'all? Jared Sandler here with you, and my crazy hair. Still a few more weeks until I get the haircut. We'll see how long it gets. This is another edition of Just Saying. If you could please subscribe or comment or both, I'd really appreciate it. In the comment section, you can just tell me I suck, or if you've got a response to what I'm saying, maybe a question or suggestions for future topics, would really appreciate you chiming in. I want to talk Cowboys. Every Monday I'm going to try to talk Cowboys. Obviously during the season, Monday is going to be a big Cowboys talking day, so I figured I'd get into that rhythm. And I want to talk about the defense. It's a new era for the Cowboys. Mike McCarthy is in, the ninth head coach in franchise history, and there are a lot of new coaches that make up his staff, including Mike Nolan. So that means that the defensive coordinator the last several years, Rod Marinelli, and I guess his top assistant, Chris Richard, are both out. A lot of folks in assessing Rod Marinelli and Chris Richard have pointed towards the Cowboys' low blitz numbers. And, both coaches, Marinelli and Richard, admitted that, blitzing wasn't really a big part of what they wanted to do. So, not a surprise that last year the Cowboys ranked 26th in blitz percentage, and they've consistently been among the least frequent blitzing teams. So not only did the Cowboys consistently not like blitzing, but a few weeks ago we heard from George Iloka they didn't really like disguising anything or tricking anyone or doing anything creative. It was that old school mentality of, I don't care if they know what we're doing, we're still going to beat them. Hat on hat. We're going to outman them. And that's cool if you can do it. And it's cool, I guess, if you have the horses. But it's not like the Cowboys have the Legion of Boom talent that Chris Richard had in Seattle. It's not like the Cowboys have Steel Curtain or the Doomsday Defense talent. And why make it harder on yourself than you need to? But, whenever there's a personnel change on the coaching side because performance wasn't up to par, a lot of people want the new coaching staff to have strategies and philosophies that are as opposite as possible. So I'm hearing a lot of people saying, well, the Cowboys, they didn't blitz at all. They need to now, be among the most blitzing teams in the NFL and kind of have a reverse. And, I think that blanket statement is kind of misguided. So I wanted to spend today, just generally speaking, without getting into the real specifics and the real nitty gritty of it, I wanted to examine the realities of blitzing and why the timing and not the volume has been an issue for the Cowboys. So all things being equal, there's a ton of available data that suggests coverage density. That's the cool, fancy way of talking about having more people in coverage. So when you rush 4, you have 7 back. When you rush 3, you've got 8 back. Having coverage density equates to more defensive success and winning than a consistently high blitz rate. That only works, however, if you can apply quarterback pressure with your 3 or 4 pass rushers. Those numbers, while they're objective measurements, they don't necessarily consider the context of the teams that probably spend the most time sending 4 pass rushers and 7 back without blitzing, or even 3 and 8. Those 3 or 4 are able to get to the quarterback at a pretty high rate. That's an important thing to understand. Now, it's also important to recognize that last year, quarterback pressure wasn't a major issue for the Cowboys. It wasn't, an NFL strength, but they were in the middle. All right, DeMarcus Lawrence only had a handful of sacks, but he was constantly applying pressure, and Robert Quinn had a good year. So, with the Cowboys' low blitz rates last year, they still were middle of the pack in terms of applying pressure. So what's the issue? The issue is the phrase that I led with, of all things being equal, because in reality, it never is. In practice, the NFL gives you new opponents, new sets of challenges each week. They're not all equal. And specifically, with each new team, you get a different quarterback. So one week, you might face a quarterback who's really good at dealing with pressure. He's really good at dealing with blitzing. He's relatively unfazed, especially compared to league numbers, when you are going to send an extra man to rush the passer when he's under pressure in the pocket. Some quarterbacks really struggle with that, right? So one week you might face a signal caller who's great at dealing with pressure, and thus blitzing doesn't seem to be the most effective strategy. And the next week you're going to face a quarterback who can't handle it at all. And so with that said, it would make sense to respond accordingly. We're not asking you to totally compromise your identity week to week, but it's important to be able to adjust and to not be so stubborn that you aren't willing to adjust and adapt. And that's where the issue was with the coaching staff, really. It seemed like the entire coaching staff, but specifically the defensive coaches last year. Sam Darnold, all right, young career, but at no point in his career has he really ever shown any ability to deal well with pressure. He has been bad against pressure. So you think the Cowboys would expose that, right? Wrong. They didn't. Their pressure packages were more or less the same that week as any other. And what happened? Well, the Cowboys were stunned when they lost to the Jets, and Sam Darnold looked like the quarterback who tore up Penn State in the Rose Bowl for USC a few years ago. The quarterback he really hasn't looked too much like at all during his NFL career. Now, on the flip side, Kirk Cousins has consistently over the last few years done really well against pressure. So I know what you're thinking. Well, but they lost to the Vikings too. They did, but not because of Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins was actually relatively pedestrian that game. He had just 220 yards in the air. 86 of those yards were to Dalvin Cook out of the flat. And Dalvin was really the reason the Cowboys lost. Dalvin had 183 total yards. Patriots non-running back pass catchers, so tight end like Kyle Rudolph and receivers, they had just 132 receiving yards on 15 completions, and every single non-throwaway that Kirk Cousins had as an incompletion was to a receiver. So Kirk Cousins wasn't really the reason you lost, if you're the Cowboys. He didn't tear you up the way he tore up some other teams last year, and it probably makes sense because he does so well against pressure, and the Cowboys didn't send a whole lot. So my point is, and my problem with the Marinelli-Richard reigns was not their unwillingness to blitz, but their unwillingness to adapt and adjust based on the opponent and specifically the quarterback. It's one thing, for instance, to ask a quarterback to constantly throw deep when he doesn't throw a good deep ball. If I can't throw a good deep ball and you as a defense aren't necessarily good at defending deep passes, it doesn't really matter if I can't get it there. But that's not what this is. Who's to say the Cowboys didn't have good blitzing personnel last year? As a matter of fact, I think as we look at some of the personnel they have, a guy like Jalen Smith seems to be someone you should utilize in that capacity more often. But it wasn't like their aversion to the blitz was based on the playing personnel. That's the issue. Again, no one's asking Chad Pennington, so to speak, to throw it 60 yards consistently. Or we're not asking him to be Randall Cunningham with the 98 Vikings. That's not what you're asking this Cowboys team to do by asking them to at least blitz more. So we all want more turnovers, right? And when a quarterback has indecision and uncertainty, you'll often get more turnovers. Or at minimum, more game-changing plays like sacks or poor third down conversion rates, especially in obvious passing situations. I'm not a big Fortnite player. I played a few times. Not a big Call of Duty player. Played a few times. But I know enough to know that if I know where my opponents are and I can see where they're moving, then I stand a much better chance to survive and kill you rather than you get to me. That's essentially what we're asking the Cowboys to not allow other teams to be able to do, is to know what the Cowboys are doing and to be predictable and to see them. The key is not necessarily to have an identity of being a blitz-heavy team. The key, or a light blitzing team, the key is to really have no identity either way from a blitzing standpoint. If I know that you're going to blitz a ton, I can prepare for that. If I know you're rarely going to blitz, I can prepare for that. But if I don't know, if you've got me thinking, that helps you. And the fact that Cowboys were consistently a low blitzing team, with the fact that they had no interest in disguising anything, made it so much easier for quarterbacks to deal with, especially the quarterbacks who struggled against facing pressure because they got a free pass. It's like when you do something and your opponent in anything doesn't realize it's a weakness for you yet, and it's like for me, when I play basketball, I'm really good. I'm a righty, but I'm better at driving my left than to my right. So naturally, the first time I play someone, they're going to try and force me to go left because that's what you typically do. And I'll blow right by them and get an easy layup. But then they realize, well, I can't do that anymore. And so now it makes it tougher. Well, it's like the Cowboys were letting me go left every single play by not applying pressure or making it more of a point to apply pressure to Sam Darnold. So that's my issue with the Cowboys D. I want more turnovers. I want more sacks. I want more of those big plays. But you can't just sit here and say, well, I want that and it's going to happen. You got to think about the process. And for me, it's the ability and willingness to adapt and adjust week to week based on the opponent, and to be able to be versatile in what you're capable of doing defensively. All right, that's this week's, or today's, I should say. Just saying, we'll have another one Wednesday, another one Friday. Plus, we got some cool interviews that you'll need to be sure to check out throughout the week, including our weekly Wednesday Just Hanging with Nosebleed Seats segment. If you can please subscribe, I'd appreciate it. Also, would love your comments in the comments section. We'll talk to you soon.